And I think just as our church grows, like you fight that natural tendency to think, well, it's impossible to know everybody. But I see the opportunity when people are coming to church to be accessible to everybody, to say hello. Yeah, so standing outside on the front porch, sometimes it's weird. A lot of people don't even know I'm the pastor, but I really love it because it puts me in a spot where I get to know stories like John's story. Hey, you're good? All right.
Action.
So tell me a little bit about John, just some of the characteristics that just made him.
John Ebbe was the best. He I don't know how to say it. He was just really a good person. And John Ebbe always had an open heart for anyone and anything. Through all the years of him being, he was always like that.
So I remember the first time I met John, I sat down in a seat on the front row and somebody taps me and this gentleman says, "Hey, I don't have very long to live, but every day that I have left to live, I'm gonna live it for Jesus." And I turned to him and said, "Wow, that's amazing. Tell me your name." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, my name is John." And I said, "John, it's nice to meet you. You said you didn't have long to live. Tell me about that." And he said, "Well, I have stage 4 cancer, and the doctors are telling me I have about 6 months left."
From the day of his diagnosis, we all came back together and rallied, and here we are sitting here today because a year and a half ago, I would have never thought that we would all be sitting here together.
So a few weeks later, John and I met up to grab a sandwich for lunch, and we sat and we talked for probably 2 hours. We talked a lot about his family, about his kids, and certainly about his wife, Vicky. He told me, I'm trying to get Vicky to come to church, and he said, Vicky has her own church, and she said she always would tell John, I'm good with this. And John would say, "Yeah, but you also need this," and would say, "This is why I go to Alamo Community, because you get both of these things."
He would come home and start preaching to me and tell me, "Mom, the pastor was so good. Let me tell you what he said today." And he would share, and I'd be sitting over there going, you could watch it too online. Okay.
John didn't miss church a lot, for much of anything.
Mom would tell him, "Dad, are you sure you can go to church today? Are you sure?" And he wanted to go. It was just, you guys helped him, and by you guys helping him, it helped him to help all of us.
John would talk about wanting Vicky to come and to join him, which she did. There was a Sunday where I told John in advance, "Hey, I'm gonna say something about you in my sermon. I just want our church to know who you are so we can pray for you." And John was pretty pumped about that. And so Vicky came to church with him that day. And I think the thing that he would tell me, if he had any concern for Vicky, it was just that he said, Vicky knows God, but she doesn't have the opportunity that he had to make friends who are all trying to follow Jesus together. So that sense of camaraderie and encouragement and comfort that Paul talks about in his letters, I think he was pretty burdened about that in Vicky's life.
That was the core of everything with him, is that he knew, and when he was diagnosed with everything, it was it shook us. All of us were what? And with him, he was you guys, it's okay.
He was fine with it.
Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. I just have to make sure that you guys are okay, because I know what my end is going to be, and I know whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year, I'm going to be okay. But I just need to make sure that you guys are okay.
But then one Sunday morning in December, I was outside shaking hands, and when I got ready to go in for the service to start, it hit me I didn't see John today. So after church that day, on my way home, I stopped and texted John and just said, "Hey, I didn't see you today, man. Are everything okay?" And so he sent me a text back, and he said, "Oh, buddy, I'm in the hospital. So I went over to University Hospital where he was and was able to sit with he and Vicky for a while. And when I got ready to leave that day, he said, well, hey, buddy, this may be the last time I get to see you. And I told him, I said, no, man, like, this isn't it. And even if it's a goodbye, it's only a goodbye for now. And so we prayed together.
When he was in the hospital for those 2 weeks and he knew he was going to go home on hospice, he was like, Adrian, like, I know
Just
this
take
is it.
me home.
Like, I just want to go home, but like, he was like, listen,
It's okay.
you know, I'm going to have a good day. And I know that.
And one of the last phone conversations I had with John, and he said, well, I'm a little afraid. And I said, well, you know, John, neither one of us have ever died before. So being afraid is like, that's a really natural thing. And I said, what are you afraid of? And he said, well, I'm not afraid of dying. I know where I'm going. He said, you know, just the thought of leaving my family behind. And so we talked through that. So the following Tuesday, I had gone into the church office and was telling some of the staff about John. And as I'm telling this story, my phone rings and I look down and it's John Ebbe on my phone. And so I pick it up and I said, hey, John, we were just talking about you. And on the other end of the line was John's son, Eric. And he said, hey, Pastor. And I said, oh, no, Eric. And he said, yeah, Dad just passed away. So I drove over to their house and was able to sit there with their family.
Like I said, we're all back together, and you know, even though Dad's gone, like, he's still working on us because, like I said, I mean, ACC may not make it every Sunday, but you know, either it's YouTube or when we go.
She
or whatever.
listens to it every night.
I do.
Yeah.
And so a few weeks ago, as we're getting ready to start a third service, I made this appeal of how we need more volunteers to be able to accommodate 3 services. And after the service, Vicky came up to me and she said, hey, I'm volunteering today. And I said, oh, really? What are you going to do, Vicky? And she said, well, I'm going to serve on that welcome team. I'm going to be on this hospitality team out front and say hello to people. I think I can do that.
The volunteer helping at the church and stuff. I think that's like daddies telling you, saying, look, you could have been doing this, Vicky. I told you.
And in that moment, I thought, man, I don't know if there's windows in heaven. I'm not quite sure how that works. But I thought, man, if John is looking down, then he's got to be smiling because this whole thing has come full circle. Vicky coming and attending and being a part of Alamo Community Church to now Vicky being the person who in a Sunday in the near future is going to be standing out on the front porch welcoming other people to ACC.
You know, hope somebody can hear this story or that's at least maybe going through the same thing that Dad was, and you know, this put a smile on their face, like, you know what, they made it through it. And you know, like I said, as long as my dad's story can help somebody else to put a smile on somebody's face, and that's.
John was a friendly guy, and he had lots of friends outside of church, but the fact that he chose to make our church his home, I don't think it was an accident, and I think it was an opportunity that God gave us, and certainly me, to learn that you don't really know where people are when they. Hold on just a second, man. You never really know all that someone is going through when they walk through the front doors. And some people, for sure, may be having like the time of their life. But John's story reminds me that probably more times than not, there are more people like John who are trying to figure out life and hurt and illness and where God is in the middle of all of that. And so to think that, at least in this instance, that God would make it clear that he's entrusted us with a guy like John Ebbe is really pretty